Welcome back, everybody. It's time for lesson 2 of this IELTS speaking course, and we are covering part 2 here, which is the, part 2, there are 2 strategies that I'm going to teach you in this course. In this lesson, we're going to be covering the 4 corners strategy. Now, just a little bit of review from part 1, in case anybody missed that lesson. We'll go through it fairly quickly here. So in terms of the topics that you might face in part 1, it's all about you, your life, your country, your culture. The examiner has a list of questions, okay? So we have a list of 10 to 12 questions, typically 12, but it could be a couple short, 10 or 12. All right, and they're based on 3 or 4 different topics, okay? The examiner needs to get through all 12 of those questions, okay? And part 1 cannot go beyond 5 minutes, so it's very possible that the examiner will stop you and move on to a new question if you speak for too long. If you do get interrupted, don't worry, they're not counting that against you. We actually prefer that, but we do sometimes need to interrupt people. And this was the list of 30 topics that I suggested practicing with. Now, there are a few that are more popular than others, more common than others, and that is these 4: work, study, home, and hometown. I really recommend studying those in depth, and I have a list of questions for those in lesson 1 in case you missed it. Other topics, when you're practicing them, the easy way to practice it is just to think of 3 questions related to the topic. Okay, one about you, one about your life, and one about your country or culture. Okay, so for example, I don't have an example here. Let's go back to another example though. Let's say pets, for example. Okay, so a question about you, okay, would be something like, do you like pets? Right? A question about your life would be, what was your first pet? Okay, that would be about your life. And then something about your country or culture, something like, what kind of pet is most popular in your country? Okay, but practice those 3 questions once or twice. You should be well prepared for that topic. Remember, the idea is not to memorize. The idea is to prepare your ideas, okay? Don't prepare vocabulary and grammar and stuff. Just prepare what you want to talk about for each topic. All right, and this was the strategy that I suggested, okay? For the part 1, for each question, answer with a short answer, and then give 1 sentence of detailed support. Okay, if you can come up with 2, that's great, but really 1 plus 1 should be enough to express your willingness to expand your answer. For example, what kind of art do you like? 1, I like paintings mostly. 2, actually, I love art that has a lot of colors because color really has a strong effect on my mood. So put those 2 together and you have a perfect answer, nice and fluent. The idea is to do it quickly and confidently. Okay, that's enough part 1. Let's move on to part 2. Part 2, the nickname for part 2 is called the long turn. The long turn. In part 2, you are going to be speaking by yourself. Okay? So the examiner is going to give you a prompt. You're going to have some time to prepare, and then you're going to speak. But the examiner is not going to help you, okay? You're not going to get any follow-up questions from the examiner in part 2. This is your chance to show off your ability to speak at length and to show off some vocabulary and some fairly advanced grammar, if indeed you have that in your toolbox, okay? So, let's take a look at the process that you will see in the exam. Okay? So when a student comes in to see me, for part 2, I start by giving you a topic card. Okay? I'm going to give you a topic card, and I will actually read that topic card for you as well. Okay? You then have 1 minute to prepare to speak. The examiner will provide you with something to write with and some paper. Okay? You have 1 minute to prepare. This 1 minute is really the key. Okay? That's what I'm going to help you with the most. Okay? Every examinee, every student is at a different level in terms of their grammar, in terms of their vocabulary. Okay? But one thing that you can improve on is your preparation. That is the easiest way to improve your task 2 or part 2 speaking score, is to learn how to prepare efficiently. Okay? A lot of students who come in to do the test, I can sense that they have a higher vocabulary and higher grammar than they produce. Okay? It's kind of sad to watch it because I can't give them a higher score because they are not producing, but I can sense that they are capable of doing more. So that's what I want to help you with, basically, is to produce at your highest level, okay? To really produce what skill you have, if that makes sense, okay? So maybe you have the grammar and the fluency and the vocabulary to get a level 7, okay? A band score of 7. I want to help you be able to produce those abilities so that you can actually get the 7. Okay? So, it's all about the preparation. That's my point here. Then, the examiner tells you to begin speaking. You speak for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay? Honestly, go for 2 minutes. There's no reason to stop short of 2 minutes. Okay? This is your chance to demonstrate your skills. Okay? Use the full 2 minutes. The examiner will stop you after those 2 minutes are up. And that is the end of part 2. Okay? So that's it. 1 minute to prepare, 1 to 2 minutes to speak. Now, some key information that will help you with part 2, things that you really need to know going into it. First of all, the topic card cannot be changed. This is the worst thing to happen when I'm in these speaking tests, is sometimes a student will see the card and say, I don't know anything about this topic. Can I change it? And I say, no, you cannot. That is very much against the rules. Okay, we are not allowed to give you a new card, so do not ask for a new one. You're stuck with the topic that you're given. Okay? Second, when you're speaking, don't be afraid to glance at your notes. Okay, glance at your notes. What does that mean? Don't read from your notes. Eye contact is important. Okay, you have to make eye contact with the examiner. But don't be afraid to look down every few seconds just to check what you were planning to talk about. Okay, that's why you took the notes. Okay, the examiner, as an examiner, I'm never going to punish someone for checking their notes. However, your fluency score will be deducted if you have your eyes on your notes the whole time. Okay? Next, you are scored on language use, not content. Now, what does that mean? The content can be boring. It doesn't have to be interesting. Okay? So don't worry if you feel like you have nothing interesting to say. That's not going to affect your score. However, what I do notice from a lot of students is that if they have nothing interesting to say, they also have no interesting language to produce. You know what I mean? When you're saying something boring, you usually use boring words. Okay? So, if possible, try to think of something interesting to talk about. That interesting thing will push you to use more creative, more high-level vocabulary and grammar structures. Okay? So, you're not scored on your content, but good content usually leads to good language use. So, try to make it interesting. Next, do not be afraid to wander a little bit off topic. Right? It's not going to hurt you. Okay? If the topic is pets and you start talking about your dog, okay, and you explain how your dog bit your friend once, okay, you have this weird story about the time that your dog bit your friend, that's fine. That's still related to pets. Maybe it doesn't match the questions exactly that the examiner gave you, okay? But it's okay to wander a little bit, right? In fact, that wandering often leads to spontaneous, surprising, interesting, creative language use, all right? So don't feel like you're in a box and you can't talk about anything else. Wander a bit, just not too much. I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it one more time. Try to speak for the full 2 minutes. Okay? If you stop after 90 seconds, the examiner will just move on to part 3. Okay? But those 2 minutes, this is your chance to show off. Okay? In fact, I mean, you're either going to show off your language in part 2 or part 3. In part 3, you don't know what questions you're going to get. Okay? In part 2, you do. Okay? You planned that yourself. Right? And it's always something related to you. It's not an abstract question. Okay? It's always a concrete question related to you and your life. Okay? So it's much easier to perform well in part 2 rather than part 3. Okay? Part 3, you don't know what questions you're going to get. Okay? So, use this opportunity and speak for the full 2 minutes. This is maybe the most interesting point that I will tell you, okay? Now, in writing, when you take the writing exam, there is a category where you get graded, you get scored based on how well you followed the task. Okay? If the task asks you for your opinion and you don't give your opinion, you're going to be punished. Okay? You receive a deduction on your score. In speaking, there is no section of the rubric that is based on that. Okay? We can't, examiners cannot punish you if you don't do exactly what the topic card says. Okay? So the topic card always starts with a general thing, a general topic, and then it gives you 4 kind of bullet points, right? So it says something like, describe the best vacation that you've ever been on. Okay, that's the general topic. And then they give you 4 bullet points, right? Tell me where you went, who you went with, what you did, and why it was so memorable. Okay? They give you 4 things to talk about. That's there to help you. Okay? That is there to help you brainstorm ideas. You do not have to stay within that. You do not have to follow those bullet points. Okay? So, we're going to see tomorrow that I have a different style of organization for how you can talk for 2 minutes about this topic. You're still going to stay within the topic, but you're not going to follow the bullet points. Okay? So, if you come up with an interesting idea that is outside of the bullet points, don't worry. You can talk about it. That's fine. Okay? Now, let's talk about the strategy for today. The strategy is called 4 corners. Okay, 4 corners. Take a look at this prompt. Describe a sporting event you watched or took part in. Okay, you should say when this event was held, where it was held, who participated in the event, and explain why you still remember this event. All right, so we have a general thing, sporting event, and then we have 4 kind of details. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. When, where, who, and why. All right? Now we're going to use those 4 things to organize our 2-minute speech. Okay? And here's the way we do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Simple as that. Okay? 4 corners, 4 boxes, 4 sections, 4 areas, whatever you want to call it. Okay? But this is the way to organize it. So this is all about note-taking. Okay? Remember, my goal is to help you prepare so that you can show off your language use. Okay? You can show off your vocabulary. You can show off your grammar. This course is not going to give you vocabulary and grammar skills. Okay? It will a little bit, but for the most part, this is to help you prepare so that you can perform at the highest level of your ability. Okay? Of your ability. I can't give you my ability, unfortunately. Okay? This is about strategy here. Okay? And the strategy here is all about your note-taking. Because now you've got 4 different categories. You need to talk about each one for about 30 seconds. Okay? And that's the way you can practice at home. Okay? Take a timer, practice one section for 30 seconds, another section for 30 seconds, the third section, 30 seconds, the fourth section, 30 seconds. Okay? All together, that's going to give you a full 2-minute answer. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at how I would prepare for this question. Okay, so let's see here. We've got when here, where here, who here, and why I remember here. All right, so the notes that I'm going to take, let's put all these in bold so we can tell the difference. Now, let's see. When? Well, let me think of a sporting event that I took part in. Actually, just a few weeks ago, I went to a Seattle Sounders game. Okay, and that was in Seattle, as you can imagine. It's a soccer team. And I went there. Let's see, when did I go there? I went there about 3 weeks ago. On vacation with so I was on vacation in Seattle, okay, staying with my sister and, let's see, dad, brother-in-law, and brother went with me. Okay. I'm trying to think what else around that time. Weather was really good. What else about the time that I was there? When? Well, it was an evening game. So we had dinner and beers before the game. So that was pretty fun. Okay, that looks like enough material to talk about for 30 seconds. Okay, and this is all just train of thought. Not all of it is related to when, but when I thought about 3 weeks ago, my mind went back to that time, and I thought, okay, what was I doing there? How was the weather? What was I doing in Seattle? who was I at the game with, his evening game. All of this kind of followed from when I went there. Now, where was it? Okay, it was in Seattle. Okay, at the Seattle Sounders Stadium. About the location, what else can I say about that? It's on the west coast of America. And let's see about the stadium itself. Oh, it was pretty difficult to find parking, actually. And we had to walk 20 minutes from parking lot. All right, and there was, well, that's about it. That's all I can think of for where, just off the top of my head. Now, who participated in the event? Oh, I forgot we had great seats. Who participated in the event? Obviously the Seattle Sounders team. And the other team was the Portland Timbers. They're actually big rivals, so the crowd was really huge. Tons of people there, really. And stadium was very loud, and we learned some cheers and chants. Whenever Seattle plays against Portland, there's always a huge crowd that comes, so I think I can talk about that in the who part. Now, why do I remember? Why do I remember it? Well, it was a great time with my family. Okay, my brother, father, etc. All right. I shouldn't say etc. There was only 3 people. I shouldn't make my brother-in-law become etc. And why else do I remember it? It was my first live soccer match. Usually I watch it on TV. And why else do I remember the game so well? Very fun environment. Okay, so just the crowd, the energy was really good. Okay, and that is my 1 minute. Okay, I know it took longer than 1 minute, but that's because I was thinking out loud. Okay, so if you do actually take it, make sure, when you're practicing, give yourself 15 seconds for each little box that you make. Okay, 15 seconds to fill it out, and then move on to the next box. All right, just jot down any words, any keywords that you can. Now, everybody has a different note-taking style. Okay, now when I take notes by hand, like using a pen and pencil, I take much different style than this. I use a lot of symbols, a lot of arrows, things like that. You might find a different style as well. And as you're writing, if any kind of academic vocabulary comes to your mind, great, put that down there. That could really help you in the end. Things like rivals was a good one there. Probably change huge to something like enormous. If you find yourself with a little bit of extra time, try to think of some vocabulary. But really, don't waste your time coming up with key vocabulary points. It's not that impressive to the examiners, okay? Trust me on that. The key thing is to get a lot of ideas, because the biggest mistake you can make is to run out of time. Okay, that is the big disaster. All right. So why don't I give you my 2-minute speech about this event and you can give me a score if you want to. Okay? I hope I can get a 9, a band score of 9. No, I'm sure I can, but just to demonstrate what you should shoot for, I'll go ahead and give my example of this. Okay, I would like to tell you about the time that I went to a Seattle Sounders game, which is a soccer team in Seattle. I went there about 3 weeks ago while I was on vacation visiting my family there. It was an evening game, so we went out for dinner and we had a few alcoholic beverages before the game, just to sort of add to the excitement a little bit. The location of the game was in downtown Seattle, so we had to commute there by bus, actually, but it was pretty nice. This was on the west coast of America, so the weather in the summertime on the west coast is just beautiful. Dry, sunny, not muggy at all, just amazing. The sky was so blue, you wouldn't believe it. The team that was playing, the Seattle Sounders, they play in the Major League Soccer division in America, and they were playing against the Portland Timbers. And actually, Portland is just around 100 kilometers or so south of Seattle. So Portland and Seattle are huge rivals. They absolutely hate each other. And for that reason, the crowd was enormous. Biggest crowd I've ever seen in a stadium before. The stadium was so loud, everybody was cheering, and we were able to learn some of the cheers and chants that Seattle is kind of famous for. They're really famous for having a really big group of spectators that are really integrated into the game. And I remember the game so well because it was such a good time with my family. I rarely get to see my brother, so this was a really good chance for that. And it was also my first live soccer match that I got to see in person. Okay, that's 2 minutes. You can tell I really lean on my fluency, okay? I speak really fast, of course, and probably I could have maybe hit a few more academic vocabulary words. I was doing my best to do that, but this topic didn't lend itself too well to that for me. So if there was a weakness, it was probably in vocabulary. Let's do another example. So take a look at this one. Describe your favorite famous person. Your favorite famous person. Ooh, okay. Your favorite celebrity. You should say why this person is famous, how long they have been famous, when you first heard of this person, and explain what about this person makes him or her your favorite famous person. Okay, so we got why they're famous, how long they've been famous. It seems odd to me. Huh, okay. And when you first heard of this person, and why this person is your favorite person. Those are your 4 corners here. Okay, so let me think. Who is my favorite famous person? You should try to think of this as quickly as possible. I did not look at this prompt in advance, so I could come at it fresh. So let me think. My favorite famous person. I need someone that I know something about. Okay, so I'm going to pick an athlete. Okay, I'm going to pick a guy named Tony Romo. Okay, Tony Romo is a American football player. He's on my favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. So, why this person is famous? Plays professional football. He's a quarterback. He is kind of famous for being often injured. It's too bad for my team, but he is kind of famous for being often injured. Why else is he famous? Oh, he dated a famous singer. Carrie Underwood, I think was her name. They might be married, actually. I'm not really sure. I don't really follow his personal life that much, but that made him even more famous. What else about him makes him famous? I guess that's it. Now, how long has he been famous? About 10 years. Joined the team 10 years ago. Became even more famous maybe 5 years ago, dating Carrie Underwood. Right? When did I hear about this person? I heard about him right away. I've been a kind of lifelong fan of the Dallas Cowboys. Okay? And I can explain a little bit more about that. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, until age 7. And my father is a big fan. So we watch games together. Okay? And that's why I heard about him right away. Right? And then, why is this person my favorite? What about this person makes him my favorite person? Well, I think his personality, he is humble and a good, humble, a good leader. He doesn't get in legal trouble. Okay, a lot of American football players get into trouble with the law. So like drugs or alcohol or something. He never really has any problem with that. And he's loyal to the team. Okay? So he has never left. He probably could have left and gotten paid more somewhere else, but he's always stayed loyal to us, never thought about leaving for a different team. Okay, so, I think picking a professional athlete may have made this a little bit difficult for myself, but in the end, using the four corners method was not really a problem, okay? I should be able to speak pretty easily for 2 minutes about this guy, Tony Romo, okay? And just to show you that I'm able to do it, why don't I give you an example? Let's see. All right, 2 minutes. My favorite celebrity would have to be Tony Romo, and he's a professional athlete. He plays American football for my favorite team, which is called the Dallas Cowboys. They're a team based out of Dallas, Texas, in the south part of America. He plays quarterback for the Cowboys, which is the most high-profile position on the team. So quarterbacks for any team are super famous, but for the Cowboys especially, the Cowboys are a kind of prestigious team, and they're often in the spotlight in terms of the media. So he is especially famous because he plays for the Cowboys. Also, about 5 years ago, he started dating a famous singer named Carrie Underwood, and that made him even more famous because suddenly the music world started taking notice of this athlete when before he was only known to the sports world. He's been famous for around 10 years because that's when he joined the team. And then, as I mentioned, 5 years ago, he got a boost in popularity due to his starting to date Carrie Underwood. Now, I heard about Tony Romo about 10 years ago when he started as a Cowboy. I've been a lifelong fan of the Dallas Cowboys because until about the age of 7, I lived in Dallas, so I went to a couple of professional games there. Also, my father spent even more time than me in Dallas, so he is a huge fan of the team. So we love to watch games together. It's one of the ways that we have bonded over the years. He's my favorite famous person, partly because of his personality. He's very humble, and he's a really good leader for the team. And also, he doesn't really get into the kind of legal trouble that sometimes plagues American football players, such as drugs and alcohol. Okay, that was 2 minutes. All right, not bad. So I think if I had chosen maybe a politician or a musician or something, I might have had more to talk about. But even with an athlete, using the four corners method worked just fine for me. All right, let's take a look. So describe your last vacation. What you did, where and when you went, who you went with, and what you enjoyed most. Let's see, what I did, where, when, who with, and what I enjoyed most. Okay. Now, let's see. Well, let's see. My last vacation. I actually just finished my last vacation, so this is kind of a perfect question for me. What did I do? Well, I went to Seattle. Okay, I stayed with my sister and brother-in-law. I watched the Olympics a lot. What else did I do while I was in Seattle? I went golfing with my father. I went hiking with my brother. And I saw a soccer match, as I already told you, right? Where and when? Okay, Seattle. It was 3 weeks ago, but the duration was 5 weeks. It was a really long vacation. It was a summer vacation, so the weather was great. And I guess I can say where Seattle is. It's called the Pacific Northwest, and that's a region in America. Okay? And actually, my sister doesn't really live in Seattle. She lives in the suburbs. So maybe I can mention that. Who did I go on vacation with? Well, I traveled alone, but family lives there. So my parents, sister, brother-in-law, and my brother, they all live in that region. So I guess I kind of traveled with them, although I did go there alone. What did I enjoy most? I think time with my father was probably the thing that I really enjoyed the most. Golfing and chatting. What else did we do together? We'll get golfing a lot. Let's see. Oh, went downtown and saw a sculpture garden. Okay. I think that should be enough stuff to talk about for 2 minutes. All right. Now, let's see if I can do it here. You ready? Let me talk to you about my last vacation. On my last vacation, I took a trip to Seattle, and that is in the Pacific Northwest area of America. And I stayed there with my sister and my brother-in-law, and I did a lot of things while I was there. One of the things I enjoyed was getting a chance to watch the Olympics. There's really good coverage on TV, and yeah, I really enjoyed watching the track and field events, especially. Were really cool. Usain Bolt breaking all those records was pretty great. I also went golfing a lot. I went golfing 3 times, which for me is a lot. And I went hiking as well, went hiking with my brother. And I also saw a soccer match, and that was really fun. Where it was, Seattle, as I mentioned, is in the Pacific Northwest, but my sister actually lives in the suburbs. So it's probably about 10, 15 kilometers northeast of Seattle proper. But it's a good location. It's really beautiful there. And I stayed there for 5 weeks, and I just got back from vacation around 3 weeks ago. So I'm still kind of recovering from my jet lag a little bit. I actually went there alone, but my family lives there. So my parents live there in that area. My sister, of course, lives there with her husband. And my brother also lives in that area a few hours south, but I still got to spend a lot of time with him. The thing that I enjoyed the most about my vacation was spending some quality time with my father. We went golfing several times, as I mentioned, and golfing has always been the way that we bond and find things to chat about. We also took a trip downtown to see a sculpture garden, and that was a really memorable experience for me. Okay, that was 2 minutes. Not bad, right? Yeah, the 4 corners technique really worked well for me on that one. What did I do? Where did I go? Who did I go with? What did I enjoy most? Yeah, as I mentioned before, you don't have to follow these bullet points, but they are here to help you. So this is one way for you to organize your thoughts. Okay, so let's see. Describe a building you have seen that you thought was interesting. And we should say where the building was, what it was used for, what it looked like, and why it was interesting. Okay, what would be a good option for this one? You know, I used to live in New York, so maybe I could use that one. Actually, I think I'll use a building in Seoul. Okay, and where it was in Seoul. Okay, in the Gangnam district. So if you guys know the song Gangnam Style, okay, it comes from that area in Seoul. That's where the building was. It was near my apartment and within walking distance of my workplace. Now, what was it used for? I think there were offices in the upper floors. It was about 25 stories high. And in the first floor, there was a large, very large cafe. And I remember they had drip coffee, which was very rare at the time in Korea. So Korea loves espresso and stuff, so finding drip coffee, it was kind of a treat for me. So I really remember that cafe for that reason. What did it look like? It has holes all over it. Okay, I don't know how to explain it, except that we called it the Swiss cheese building. But the, let's see, it was, aside from that, you know, rectangular, oh, it was white or kind of a cream kind of color. Okay. And why was it interesting? Well, the shape was very unusual, and there are no internal supports. Okay, if you know what I mean by that. So when you walked into the cafe, for example, it was all open space. Why else was it interesting? I think that's it, really. The shape itself was the interesting thing. All right, so let's see if I can give you a good sample answer based on my 4 corners notes. Okay, I would like to talk to you about a building that is located in Seoul. And I think this building is really interesting, and I'll explain why. The building is located in the Gangnam district of Seoul. It's a downtown district, a lot of office buildings, and a lot of language schools. And that's why I know that area so well, because it's related to my job. It was near my apartment, this building, and it was also within walking distance of my workplace. So I would go there often, either from my apartment or when I'm taking a break from work, or before work or after work, during lunchtime. I went there very often, actually. And what it was used for, I believe the upper floors held offices. I'm not sure because I never went above the first floor, but I assume that there were offices there. The building itself was about 25 stories high, but as I said, I only ever went to the first floor where there was a large kind of sprawling cafe. And I remember this cafe very distinctly because they had drip coffee there. And that was very unusual. Most of the cafes in that neighborhood only have espresso drinks, like Americano and lattes. But being from America, I really wanted drip coffee, and this place had it. The appearance of the building is really the unusual or interesting thing about it. It has holes all over it. The exterior walls have giant, maybe 10-meter in diameter holes that just cover the entire building. We used to call it the Swiss cheese building. The walls themselves are white or kind of a cream color. It's a very distinctive looking building, and it also has no internal supports. So the cafe inside, for example, was just pure open space. There were no pillars or walls or anything like that. Okay, and that's my 2 minutes. All right, and you can see how well the four corners technique has worked so far. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to learn a second technique in the next lesson. And some people prefer that second technique to this one. However, this is a really good basic technique, and you're using what they're already giving you in the prompt. Okay, so if you feel comfortable with this technique, I'd say go for it, stick with that, practice it a lot. Okay? Remember, the goal here is to come up with a lot of content so that while you're speaking, you can use some advanced vocabulary sort of spontaneously. Okay? Get all the content out of the way. It frees you to use the best language that you are able to use. Okay? All right, and we'll leave it there for this lesson. All right? The next lesson will be on the same part 2. Okay? But we will study, as I mentioned, a second strategy. So, stay tuned, and I will see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.